And here we are. Happy New Year, Miss Wald, Dr. Energy. Not a doctor, but doctor.
That's why my title is
I love it.
Dr.
I love
Energy.
it. How is it going today?
It's a beautiful new year, which feels a whole lot like the last one, but forging ahead.
There we go. And we have OPEC news. And so OPEC news that is no news. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes. The
Okay.
OPEC news is that we're having more OPEC tomorrow.
Yes.
So if you didn't get enough of it today, or you forgot about it because you're still drunk from New Year's Eve, you can tune in tomorrow.
So I was on Twitter this morning and I was seeing that Russia was saying 500,000 barrels, and so on the Texas One Guys podcast said, well, this is kind of what it looks like. We'll see. And then by the time I got off, I saw you tweeted out that someone didn't have their Zoom muted, and the deal fell apart. Was that all connected or not?
So basically what happened was they were supposed to have a JMMC meeting, which is where the ministers meet, and like certain ministers and certain committee meet, and they talk about compliance levels. So that was supposed to happen first. That was delayed. It was all supposed to start at something Vienna time, which is like 6 a.m. here, maybe 6 a.m. Either 6 or 8. I don't know. I think that the actual OPEC meeting was supposed to start at 8. I was prepared for that, but it was all delayed. And finally, they put the broadcast up. So anyone can watch the OPEC broadcast as long as you don't mind their like really annoying techno music, which they put on, and it just goes dun 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 dun. It's like waiting. And then finally they started there. So the JMMC ended with no recommendation, which is not unusual because they don't always issue a recommendation, like a policy recommendation. Mm-hmm. So in fact, I think rarely do they actually issue a policy recommendation. And then so what happened was that Prince Abdulaziz spoke first, as is his tradition. He gave like a speech and basically laid out the Saudi position, which is the market has, there are significant risks in the market. There's a lot of, problems. We've made so much progress, and all the things that we've done, don't ruin it now. Basically saying we don't want to increase production and you shouldn't either. And then he turns it over to Novak with his, good friend, Alexander Novak. And Novak proceeds to start speaking, and he's totally muted.
Well, it was the unmute. He wasn't okay. I thought I was taking it to mean that he was talking about Trevor Lawrence's mustache or something like that. So
he may have been. The truth is he only speaks in Russian, so he could be talking about God knows what, and only the Russian reporters are understanding it. There's this guy, Dmitry, his last name escapes me, who does his interpreting for him, which is great. It's not simultaneous interpreting, so we'll listen to Novak speak in Russian, and then he'll fill us in on what actually happened. But Novak was basically like, yes, we've made so much progress, and there are weaknesses, things are unclear, we do not know. And but everyone knew, he didn't lay out his position, but everyone knows that his position was Russia wants to increase 500,000 barrels a day for the month of February. Like, we're talking about 1 month. We're talking about a particularly short month, right? It's not even a leap year.
Yeah, it's a really short month.
Wasn't last year was leap year?
Yeah, last year was leap year.
2020 was like the longest year, like actually.
So let me ask you this.
Anyway, well, then they turned it over to Angola. Angola is the president of OPEC this year because they do it alphabetically, and like no one could hear what he was saying because he sounded like he was at the end of a tunnel.
Oh no.
And then ABS told everyone that they should vaccinate themselves with humility. Because I think the word of the day there is vaccinate. His whole point was that he was like, I've always said the vaccine will change everything, and the vaccine is here, but it's not the vaccine, it's vaccination. I think he was basically looking at the news of what's going on, like in New York and stuff with vaccination, being like, could you please hurry up and stick these needles into people so we can sell you more oil? I mean, that's like what they're thinking.
Well, okay, so two things. One, it was nice of them to break so they can come catch our comments about the OPEC meeting. We appreciate that to all the OPEC ministers tuning in. Two, it feels like either this news came up on my Twitter feed right after, or Scotland was watching the meeting and they're like, "Oh, by the way, if you're gonna drag this out another day, we're gonna go ahead and shut down everything until the end of January." Did you see this?
I know. Oh my God. They're like, we're shutting everything down. Didn't Germany do something too?
Yeah, and so we talked about these monthly meetings, and how much news, how much reactionary. You kind of envision it to be like one day, a handful of hours. They're going to come, they're going to meet, or Zoom meet, and be done. But having the news break like this between the meetings, my understanding is they're going back to kind of talk about what's all being proposed amongst themselves, and come back tomorrow. But if you have shutdown news breaking in the middle of the meeting or in the adjournment, will we have a resolution tomorrow, you think?
Well, it's interesting because it seemed like they were doing one of these things. The meetings are closed door, so unless you have an insider, you don't really know what's going on. So it seemed like they were there, like going around the table, and everyone was like saying, "Do you support Russia's plan? Do you support Saudi Arabia's plan?" And just about everyone was going with Saudi Arabia, which is not to increase, including the UAE, which was different from last meeting where the UAE was on Russia's side.
Well, yeah, they got slapped around a little bit though, didn't they?
Yeah. So, which makes me, so Russia's got its point. Apparently, Kazakhstan joined with Russia, but so the interesting thing, I feel like it's like a Cold War like it's the UN during the Cold War. And you had like the Soviet bloc versus the like the free world bloc. Now it's like the Soviet bloc versus the Saudi bloc. So you have then also then they take a break. Okay, so there's a break because it's like late for most of them, and then they come back, and then the news breaks that Saudi Arabia is not quite normalizing relations with Qatar, but like basically going to open their airspace and their naval space, which seems like a pretty big deal. Which makes you wonder if there was like, is that somehow connected? What does that mean? Is that why the UAE has now shifted back to Saudi Arabia's side? Like maybe there was something going on there. I don't know. It just seems very coincidental.
Yeah, it is. That is strange. Okay. Well, let's get into some of the other stories, and I'm sure we'll have some more OPEC conversation. I know we will later on. So, Ellen, we haven't talked about the Fifth Fleet in a long time on this podcast, but we've got a story right here. Let's see if I can get it pulled up. There we go. Talking about a South Korean tanker. Someone just asked, "Will you cover the activities in the Middle East today? Iran seizing South Korea tanker?" Yes, that is literally what we're going to next. Good timing. Okay, so this is kind of reading this Forbes article here. It sounds like
Reuters article.
Yeah, the Reuters article. What I say? I'm sorry. The Strait of Hormuz is where this is happening at. You got the Fifth Fleet, which is somewhere in that area supposed to be. What are they doing if they're not preventing ships from being pirated by Iran? Like, what's the purpose of all these? Brits like, yes, we are observing this. It's like, oh, right, you're watching them being taken. Okay, great.
We have it on our radar.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, like, oh, they're coming to get them. Wow, that's a shame.
Yeah. So apparently, this is a South Korean chemical tanker. It was in Oman, and Iranian people have seized it. Okay, so now Iran is saying, what?
Yes, for the ship was taken to shore for polluting the sea.
Yes, polluting the sea. So, like, was the chemical tanker leaking? I feel like this is something that are like people looking at the satellites would know, because usually they can see these kinds of like oil spills. Although I don't know, how big was this chemical tanker? Okay, they say it was carrying 7,200 tons of ethanol, which is highly flammable. I don't know if it's highly flammable when mixed with seawater, though. Assuming we're buying the Iranian story that it was polluting. I mean, maybe it was just polluting because, like, ships pollute, like they burn fuel.
Oh,
it was not. Was this tanker IMO compliant?
This Iran is standing up for IMO 2020. That's the problem. Like, listen, guys, we went to flag last year, but this year, what IMO, we're taking it seriously. Yeah. That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Exactly. So
But,
I think this is the thing to watch because it's funny though because like all weekend they were like, oh my God, it's the anniversary of the Qasem Soleimani death. Is Trump going to start a war with Iran? I did not think that was remotely possible, but there are people who think that he's like itching to start a war with Iran. Is there going to be some sort of big conflagration between the U.S. and Iran like this weekend? And what was the answer to that? Iran has taken control of or commandeered a South Korean chemical tanker carrying 7,200 tons of ethanol. Which is bad. I feel bad for the South Koreans. It's like not a fun thing to have to deal with, and it's definitely like in Iran's thing, but it's not the same as like America starting a war with Iran.
right. Or it's not the same as the Iranians shooting down a passenger plane, which no one talks about anymore.
Oh yeah, no one's talking about that anymore.
All things considered, this is pretty minor for Iranian aggression, but it does make you wonder. I mean, this is one of the things. Like EU and China are working out this big trade deal right before Biden comes in, and it's kind of funny because it's like, okay, well, Biden's coming in. They know Biden's coming in. They're doing it despite Biden coming in. So Iran knows that Trump's time's going out. Biden's coming in. Biden's part of the Obama administration. They know all these facts. These aren't facts that I'm breaking news to them. What is the play here with Iran and the Biden administration? Because if you want to at least get the U.S. off your back for a little while with the new administration, this is not a good way to kind of lead this.
Yeah, I think that actually there is no play with the U.S. here. I think this is a purely Iranian South Korean deal because if you look at what they say, so apparently South Korea's deputy foreign minister is scheduled to visit Tehran, and so this is happening right before then. And apparently they were supposed to discuss at this meeting Iran's demand that South Korea release $7 billion in funds frozen in South Korean banks because of U.S. sanctions. So, I mean, I'm not sure you can it'd be really hard to argue that this tanker seizure is not related to that. I mean, that fits Iran's MO of like, we want something from you, so we will like hold something hostage until you get it because they need a way to up their up their position in the negotiating field, right? Like Iran is coming at it from a disadvantage. Now, there is a place now where the U.S. comes in, which is in these sanctions, because if South Korea is only holding on to the funds because of U.S. sanctions, okay, so what sanctions are those? Are those sanctions like pre-Trump sanctions? Are those Biden administration sanctions? Are those sanctions that the UN has also had? Or are these new Trump era sanctions? Like, is this $7 billion in funds that like they were actually owed from oil? Like,
Right.
I don't think there's enough here, but I do think that if a Biden person calls up South Korea and is like, yeah, like we're not really going to make a big deal about this, then this could be over in 2 seconds because all they have to do is say, here's your money, because the U.S. doesn't care if we give it to you, and then it'll be over. But it will also set a precedent, I think, for U.S. for how these sanctions are going to be treated, which means no one's going to give a crap about the sanctions.
So I agree with everything you're saying, which is why I tied to the Biden administration, because if Biden calls up South Korea and says, hold the line, we got your back, MSOPs ain't getting $1, then that's one thing. If the Biden administration says, I don't care, so the Iranians are kind of forcing Biden administration's hand to respond to how they're going to handle this, though. That's right.
Yeah, so this could be telling is so like yeah, if they're trying to force the hand of the new administration, then if they give in, that's going to set a precedent to Iran, which is basically we're going to do whatever we want because to get our money because they haven't drawn a line.
Right, because as you mentioned, South Korea will call the Biden administration or whatever and ask those questions, but it's yet to be seen how they'll respond. So, okay, oil falls. Let's see here. Pull this article up. Okay, there we go. Oil falls with U.S. stocks as Mike OPEC seen keeping output steady. Oil right now, at the time of this recording, is trading at $48. Miss Wall, is the price? I got the Dr. Fauci of 2020 year award. So right now, what you talking the price of oil?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it was up so much in early trading and then it kind of deflated. People thought that's because they believed OPEC was going to roll over and, you know, vaccinations and this and that. I think that probably it fell mostly because the stock market was falling. I don't know if it's tied to any specific thing because it hasn't moved a whole lot on those things, at other times. I'm guessing it's much more tied to the fact that the stock market is down.
Why would the stock market be falling? I can't possibly imagine.
Oh, no, I have no idea. Huh. Why ever might that happen?
Well, the other thing is, if we have we got lockdowns. Now, we'll see what kind of scale they are. We are what 16 days until Biden takes over. The U.S. is going to have a more clear picture, I guess, over the next 16 days, especially depending on after the Senate election this week, on what we're going to do with our economy by the late part of January. Um, it feels like a nice little retracement here. The price would work out well because if you have a Biden administration comes in and he's like, lockdowns or mask mandates or something that would stifle the economy within the first 100 days, then you might see the price naturally come down just because of lack of demand. And as you say, I haven't seen the Germany thing. I can't remember what's going on there. But if you're looking at Scotland and some of the other countries go back into lockdown, then you have that. The other thing though is what is China going to do with their oil with their buying? Right? Are they going to continue to keep buying oil, or are they going to slow down?
Yeah, I think they're going to keep buying. Um, we actually have an article about China, although it's mostly related to China's diesel
And
consumption.
diesel, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think China is going to continue buying, particularly if prices don't, they kind of stay within the range that they're in. I think once they hit 60, it's maybe a little less certain, but I remember 60 is still way less than 80, and we were at or quite near 80 back in, just like in 2018. So, 60 is not that expensive.
No, it's not. I'm kind of torn on what to think about China because you know if you read kind of some of the different analysts on what they think China's doing, it's
Mm,
some people think they're going to use the oil that they bought for cheap to kind of keep the price cheap, and so they can keep
mhm,
buying at that cheap price. Others don't necessarily think that. I've wondered though, instead of use, so let's just tease this out here. Maybe I missed something. Let's say that China is buying 20% more oil than they actually need to put into their strategic reserves. Okay, okay,
okay.
let's just make them. I'm making that number up. If they
Okay.
quit buying that 20%, wouldn't the price plummet and they could just buy the oil for cheaper then?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't think they control the oil market that much. So I
Yeah.
don't think the price will go down that much.
So how much do you think the price is inflated off of the Chinese buying?
A
A
couple
couple of dollars?
dollars.
Couple dollars?
Yeah, because I mean, it's inflated for that, but it's also based on like where Aramco sets its OSPs
Mhm.
and exuberance. Like I think it should be priced lower given like the world, but it's not because it's based on some sort of like weird exuberance that people have. That's like
The exuberance
not happening.
is the real price point. Okay. If it's only a couple if you think it's a couple dollars, then I would agree
Yeah.
that it's not enough to do it. But if China did come out, the only other thing I would add is if China did come out and said, they made a formal statement, we're reducing our buying by 30%, it would probably have an oversized reaction. So let's say it's $3 is the China price point. If they said we're going to cut our imports by 20%, the market would overreact to lower because they would feel like China, is COVID back or they're going back in. It would start all these stories about fear and uncertainty in the market, so they could get the price back down, maybe disproportionately in their favor. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Xi Jinping has not called me this year, so I don't know. Well, I
Hmm.
can't speak to what's going to go to what he's thinking. Okay, speaking of prominent people, Saudi oil minister urges OPEC plus discipline as some members seek output gains.
Mm.
So I asked you this on Twitter because we are having a little bit of not a kerfuffle. They're talking about it. Any chance we see a price war 2.0, a fixed price war 2.0?
Yeah, see, I've been wondering about that because I think part of the reason that we got that, that situation that we got back in March
Mm-hmm.
was because I think there was more at stake.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's that much at stake right now. I also think that Russia was calling Saudi Arabia's bluff, and Saudi Arabia proved it was willing to go all out,
Mm-hmm.
which I think makes, it's one thing to say we're gonna or threaten to, go all out in production. It's another thing to actually do it. And I think Saudi Arabia kind of like freaked everyone out by being like, oh yeah, they will do it. Now I don't think they'll do it again because I think they've suffered a lot from it. But the fact remains is like you can't be sure that they'll be logical about things. However, like the stakes were very different. They were talking a cut of 1.5 million barrels a day, I think back then, for a longer period than say 1 month. Right now we're talking like 500,000 barrels a day for 1 month. That is also really short because they're going to meet again in a month.
Right.
They didn't have that monthly meeting thing.
Right.
So, Russia, I think Russia, I understand why Russia is insisting on its point. It makes sense. It's a logical, defensible point of view. I mean, it's easy to say, look, we increased by 500,000 already. The market has only gone up since then. Yeah, there are a lot of factors here that are destabilizing, but we've had the same factors back then. And people see, if we don't take advantage of these prices, then we're missing out because other people are going to take advantage of them. So I can understand, I completely understand their argument, and their argument makes a lot of sense. But on the other hand, like, is it enough to like push forward and not go for consensus? I think they're probably going to get some kind of compromise, like, I don't know, maybe a 250,000 barrel per day increase, which is basically like nothing. Or Russia will give in with the understanding that they can cheat and no one's going to give them crap about it.
Okay, so I don't. You probably didn't see this because you're probably not following random Chinese ambassadors, but I'm a loser, so I do that from time to time.
No. Now we call that a wonky, I think, right?
Okay.
Is that the right term? You're wonky.
Wonky. Okay, but yes.
It's like, how like comic books used to be like really dorky and now they're really in.
Yeah. So this original tweet is from the Chinese ambassador to the UK. Okay. And he says, in 2020, China-Russia relations reached a historic high in all respects. In developing China-Russia strategic cooperation, we see no limit, no forbidden zone, no ceiling on how far cooperation can go. And this other ambassador who for somewhere in Africa, he says, I like it, no limit, no forbidden zone, and no ceiling for China-Russia cooperation. Now, this might be stating the obvious, but we have to remember that when Chinese, that's a super nice way to say that, Ellen. Wow. Thanks, Ben. Wonky. Yeah. Thanks, Ellen. Appreciate that. But so when the Chinese start this messaging,
I didn't come up with the term wonky, actually. I've just seen it used, so
yeah.
I'm claiming it.
The messaging here is interesting because, okay, first off, ambassadors in general are just there to fulfill the mission of the president or whatever. But in China, they like have their daily talking points emailed to them. And so when you see them saying this, it's not just like some random ambassador like, oh, hey, cool. This other ambassador thinks Russia is great. He's saying, no, this is the talking point, that there's no forbidden zone, no ceiling for China-Russia cooperation. Any thought on how that might impact the
I have all these really weird pictures in my head, like from that, like kind of gross stuff, like China, Russia, no forbidden zone, like little gross stuff there. I don't know, like collaborating on like mutants or something. Like a Chinese Russian mutant.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Appreciate that.
Too much science, fine.
No. Ben Ben's laying it to me here pretty hard. So, but no. With China basically telling Russia, we got your back. There's no cap. And China and Russia have been flying over Taiwan or close to Taiwan with some of their recent missions. So Russia called Saudi's bluff. The Saudis stepped to the table. Now China is saying to Russia, there's no limit to our cooperation. Might that factor in here at all? If they feel like the Chinese are going to buy more oil from them or continue buying?
Yeah. Oh, I could totally see China being like, hey, just send us more oil. Regardless of what OPEC decides. Like, we want more. Send us more. We're buying more.
But the Chinese and the Saudis have a decent relationship too, though, right? It's not the same.
Yeah, they have that you can't. Yeah. Oh, China. The relationship between Saudi Arabia and China is deep, and it's been going on for many years. And it's not just like, and it's also like Saudi Arabia has Aramco has long-term contracts with China. Like they
Mhm.
have joint venture petrochemicals and refineries with contracts where they're buying a certain amount of oil every month from Saudi Arabia, period. And
Mhm.
that's not going to change. So so really when we're talking about like who's buying what oil, like there's always going to be a baseline amount that Saudi Arabia is sending to China no matter what. We're talking about like the stuff on the margins. We're talking about like the independent refineries and who's going to be supplying them. And so I think Aramco sends its people to China, to Chinese universities to learn Chinese just to go work there. And this is like they've been doing this for a while. It's not just like, oh, MBS pops into China one day and like the staircase won't come out
Yeah.
of his airplane. That's like the tiny tip of the iceberg when it comes to the Saudi-China relationship. So it's not like they're going to suddenly decide like, oh, hey, we don't want to buy any Saudi oil this month. It's more like, is that extra, 500,000 barrels per day, how much of that is going to come from Aramco versus Kuwait versus Russia versus Iraq versus Iran?
Yeah, I guess so. The thing that's interesting when you look at China is they just kind of do their own thing. They're going to come over here and they're going to do this, they come over there and do that. But for the Saudis, this hypothetically speaking here, if the Chinese called the Russians up, says, "Listen, we need the prices to stay low. We'll buy more from you guys, whatever. We'll increase buying, or we'll work out some deal. We'll send you some more free Huawei technology. I don't know, whatever. We'll cut some deals, but we need the price to stay low." And the Saudis are against that. Um, when you do business with China, China will pay you, but then they'll also work against you in another country. And so, being that we are on a 8 months out of the price war, the great price war of 2020. You know, could you see a spot where the Saudis looked at China like, dude, you're killing us here. Like, stop, like,
Yeah.
stop, or will they just,
Hmm.
it's a good buyer. They just have to take it because that's just kind of the business that they're in.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Will they just take it? I'm of the impression that they may just take it because, they can argue, they can try to raise their OSPs, but if that results in, say, China buying more from Iran, then, they're kind of stuck. I mean, yeah, Aramco sets the selling price for the Middle East, but if like Iran is there undercutting and the Chinese are happy to buy from them, then what are you going to do? Is Aramco going to be like, oh, what? By the way, we want to open another refinery with you just
Mhm,
to increase and get more, increase their baseline?
mhm.
I could see that. But
Yeah,
I mean, or you've got China. The thing is, like, they're making more money. I mean, Aramco at least is making more money. They're not just making the sale of the oil because
mhm,
they've got ownership
mhm,
of these ventures. They've got so they're making money off of them
mhm.
too.
I
So
just think, yeah, I'm just curious because with China and Russia, what they have going, and China has proven time and again that
nothing. There are no forbidden zones. I love
no,
that line. I'm
no
going to
deal.
use that.
But I just wonder if we wake up in a spot to where there is some. You have OPEC who's trying to keep this thing together, cobble things together, and then you have Russia and China, and the amount of mixed interest that we have, especially coming out of 2020, a crazy year, a pandemic. You just wonder if some of those things can add tensions because people need to make money because they all lost money last year. I'm not an economist.
Makes
That makes a lot of sense, but you might have some joint interest there. Yes, and that they did have Russia and China just did have a joint military flying drill, which what I was referring to. I think it was like last week or 2 weeks ago. But it's off of I can't remember where it was coming out of. But anyways, but yes, they did have that, and that is part of the problem. So,
But here's the real question. Oh, I completely forgot what I was going to say. Well, maybe I'll think of it later. It has
okay.
something to do with Saudi Arabia and China. But
Speaking of China, let's talk
oh
about.
yeah, I remember. is Jack Ma hiding out in Saudi Arabia? Now that's the question.
Whoa, in Saudi Arabia. Okay.
Well,
Tell me.
hey, no one would look for him there. MBS phones up Xi Jinping. He's like, "Hey, I got your guy. What are you gonna give us?"
Yeah, I thought he was at Mar-a-Lago with Trump. He's not.
I don't know. I'm just saying. There are a lot of interesting
Do
possibilities
you
there.
have some inside intel here that you're? I think you did.
Absolutely no inside info.
Okay,
I just think that would
wink once if you know. Wink twice.
I just think that would be very interesting.
Huh? Jack Ma in Saudi Arabia. If I was Jack Ma, this is free advice for him because he needs a lot of advice right now. I would escape China and come to the U.S., strike some kind of asylum deal, and then just be on every talk show from now in the time pounding the CCP into submission. I mean,
you wouldn't just like buy your own private island and like decamp there for the rest of your life and like live out your life in like tropical whatever.
Yeah, they make them get you.
They could come get you. That's true.
Think like this. In Africa, and this might have changed, but every country in Africa denies that Taiwan is a nation except for one, I think Mozambique, because of the China aid. So of all the how many countries there are in Africa, none of them acknowledge Taiwan as its own country except for one. I get the data could have changed, but more or less this was the case a few years back. So if you escape to some island off the coast of outside some African nation, they don't exist. They don't even acknowledge that Taiwan's a country. You think they're going to protect you?
No.
So I would be very careful. I'd be very careful where you landed at.
And you can't go to Russia because even though they've got Snowden, but you definitely can't go there because there are no forbidden zones.
Yeah. So we get Jack Ma, Russia gets Snowden, and then like it's just there's this conflict.
Where does Assange is apparently going to end up in like Mexico because they're offering him asylum.
They couldn't extradite him or something. The Brits weren't sending him over, so I haven't got to follow the story. So here we go. Saudi is a valuable partner for China because China understands Russia acts just like that. Yeah, I don't think that I'm not saying that the Saudis and the Chinese aren't partners. I'm saying when you look at what China does, I'll give you an example. China will look at you and say that we're not working against you. We're just doing what we do. They have this phrase that they'll turn. We're friends with everyone. Well, when you're friends with everyone, you become enemies with some people. That's just you can't. It's just how it works. Whether you think that's right or wrong. And so, if China is doing things that influences Russia, then Russia would do stuff that might frustrate the Saudis, which would make the Saudis mad at China potentially or Russia. And so, that's all. Just
although China and Russia do share some similar origins in their ideology. Sort of.
Yeah, I've been putting out quotes from Mao on Twitter.
I noticed.
Well, I've got a book of his quotations, and I love reading them because when you hear people today say stuff, it's like, sounds like Mao. So I'm just putting them out there so people might be aware of who's influencing them. A, and then B, if you look at what happens with China, there's Xi Jinping's family was obviously kind of harassed by Mao, but a lot of what he does is kind of praise Mao and calls back to all that stuff. So yes, you want your you need more Mao in your life. Let me know. China, diesel. What's going on with China and diesel, Ms. Wall?
Yes. Apparently, it's really cold there.
Frigid China winter sees power shortages, diesel use spike. Now it is cold, but they have what I said last week, like 50 ships in the harbor full of coal that they won't bring in.
Right? Yeah. Everyone blames their power shortage on bottlenecks. That's exactly what happened in like New England and back when there was a cold snap. It's bottlenecks.
Right. What is up with this Bloomberg advertisement? Do you see this?
Oh, whoa. That's not appropriate. We run a family-friendly operation here.
Good Lord. You sent me this article.
I only get face masks on mine, so.
Oh, I wonder if I refresh if it changes. Let's see here. Yeah, it's gone.
I can't refresh because I'm at my last free article.
Oh,
By the
yeah,
way, Bloomberg, if you'd like to sponsor our podcast with, free access to your articles.
no doubt. No doubt. Okay. I think we've got a more family friendly appropriate advertisement now. Yeah. They're advertising some kind of battery thing. So anyways,
Okay.
what
That's much more on brand.
much more on brand. Yeah, makes more sense. So who is to blame for this? It seems to be the CCPs, the easy one to blame here, right?
Well, okay, so let's look at this. So, first of all, the Chinese Meteorological Authority issued an orange alert nationwide, which is apparently the second highest level in its 4-tier system. Temperatures are going down, and the grid operators are prioritizing the supply of energy to homes and the community, leaving other customers to scramble for alternate power sources, which makes me think that China's power grid is just not up to the task in general. This person, who's the sales manager at Shandong Dianyuan Village Power Technology Company, they supplied generators. They're getting a lot of orders for generators. They have, wow, listen to this. They have a wide range of generators, including some large enough to power a small town.
Mm.
That's a big generator.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, why everyone's trying. So basically, the grid isn't cutting it. I guess they don't have direct, like, now, I mean, not where I live, but like in New England, for example, your heat is mostly natural gas. Like, a lot of the heat is natural gas based.
Mhm.
So even if the power, the power might go out, but you still, like, you're getting your heat from a gas line. So it's a bit different. So I'm guessing they don't have that. I'm guessing all of their temperature all of their heat and everything is coming from the electrical grid. There are no, like, natural gas lines that they've laid. I don't know. Do you know?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't know that answer, but I do have a frustration with this piece. It says coal supplies have been tight amid safety checks at domestic mines and import restrictions, and that's also been rationed to ensure supplies for heating. Da 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 da. What import restrictions means they're not importing it literally. Like, the restriction is they're leaving it on the boat in the ocean. Like, that's the restriction. They've paid for some of this coal and it is sitting in their harbors. They won't bring it in. So I don't understand, why can't we just say what it is? Because we're afraid the CCP, like, we're saying that they are purposely
But we must believe that the CCP has, like, the perfect, that they do, their bureaucracy is so well streamlined and everything. There are no organizational issues like we have in the United States when, like, we can't seem to, like, states can't seem to, like, find enough people who want vaccines, and so they spoil. That's what happens in a capitalist country, but not in
exactly
China.
not in China. But seriously, like,
No bottlenecks.
it's like import restrictions. They're literally not taking coal they have paid for.
Well, maybe they're concerned about their commitments under the Paris peace, not the Paris peace, the Paris climate
They're going net
thing.
zero.
And
That's
so
what
they're trying, they don't, yeah, and they're concerned about that. So they're actually trying to scrub the coal before it gets to the power plants.
Yeah, they now that you say that, I wasn't thinking. They're probably trying to buy some carbon credits from somewhere.
Yeah.
Plant a few trees.
Offset their coal use. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely it, right?
Yeah, that it couldn't be anything else. But and we know that diesel is a clean form of.
Oh, it's totally clean. Oh yeah, you definitely. I mean, well, like, diesel versus coal. I mean, like, wow.
I mean, if I'm going to breathe in fumes, I like to breathe in diesel fumes.
Maybe they're trying to inflate the price of diesel for some reason. Like, they're mad at India, and so if they inflate the price of diesel, India also still have diesel, and so the prices will go up for India too.
Yeah.
I don't know if that works. Is the diesel market that global?
Either that, or maybe what they're thinking is okay, listen, we don't bring in the coal. Our economy is really not doing that well, but everyone will have to buy diesel, so folks will think that we're using more diesel than we actually are, and they'll think our economy is recovering faster.
That's it. Some genius definitely thought of that.
Okay. Speaking of India, I think we'll get two more stories real quick. December diesel demand crawls up to 97% of pre-pandemic level. How much is this coming from diesel generators?
I don't think that they're having a major cold snap in India.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
But India, a lot of things were on diesel in India. So
they'll jump 11% from November level. And then November jet sales were down more than 48% for the same month. So it's kind of like the U.S. You have these mixed indicators of what's good, what's bad, and that's kind of, we've talked about this. I don't think recently, but I know back a few months ago, which is you're going to see some things level off, and you're like, oh, okay, well the economy's going back, and then you're going to read something else like, oh no, the economy's nowhere near back or it may never get back. And this, how many flights will we average again? We don't know what that answer is right now, right? So when we start saying that, gasoline demand in the U.S. might be back, but flight demand's down. Well, is it really down, or is that just the new level for the foreseeable future? You're seeing some of that in the India numbers as well.
Yeah, very good. So, LPG, which is used there in household cooking gas, showed a 7.6% growth in annual demand during December, which was more than double of November sales, but also temperature were down. It says temperatures plummeted, but I don't think they mean quite like what's happening in China. So yeah, I think that's interesting. It'd be interesting. I almost want to ask Dr. Foreman about this because he's, the one who's really called our attention to all of the, like you said, the discrepancy in the numbers. You've got one thing it looks like it's coming back in the U.S. and then other things that are not coming back. I mean, diesel has been actually a source of strength recently in the U.S. compared to how it has been. And so now we have that here too, but is there any indication in terms of India, in terms of what this means for industry? Because we're really talking a lot about diesel as a consumer fuel in India. I'd be interested to dig deeper into some of that Indian data, but I don't think this article is going to provide it.
Just real quick, headline from the Wall Street Journal on my phone here. Saudi Arabia and allies are set to sign a deal with Qatar to end a feud that split Middle East and hurt U.S. efforts to isolate Iran, U.S. officials said. So,
if only we could fly internationally, we could take Qatar Airways to Saudi Arabia.
Okay. Yeah. Final story of the day. Investors challenge ExxonMobil on multiple fronts. I think we kind of told ExxonMobil they should tell these folks to stick it a few weeks ago. They probably didn't, and now they're going to continue to pay the price.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting to kind of see what's been going on there. I'm still wondering why other industries don't take this tact, but it's kind of a good overview of what's been going on with ExxonMobil, and can they fend this off, or are they going to give into it? They think, let's see, engine number one, which is a funny name. Their letter says, we believe ExxonMobil's underperformance can be largely attributed to its pursuit of production growth at the expense of returns and a lack of adaptability to changing industry dynamics, including higher production costs and growing long-term demand uncertainty. I'm not sure if that's really why.
Well, let me ask you this. So let's just say that Biden comes in. This is an apolitical discussion here for you folks who like apolitical discussions here. Biden comes in and he brings back the what's the waterways thing from the Obama administration, the methane emission rule. He threatens to pull. He pulls some fracking permits on federal lands. That only helps ExxonMobil, right?
Oh yeah, so, I would say.
So yeah, so it's kind of interesting because what some of these folks are pushing for, which would be green, if you will, would ultimately help ExxonMobil, which is weird. So is ExxonMobil paying these groups? Is Greenpeace funded by ExxonMobil? That's the question.
Is Greenpeace? Yeah. All right. Someone should chime in on that. Is Greenpeace actually funded by ExxonMobil?
I mean, because if
maybe,
I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So
among all of the conspiracy theorists that I've alleged over this podcast, which do you think is the most likely? That ExxonMobil is funded by Greenpeace, or that what did I say about China? That they're actually that Jack Ma is hiding out in Saudi Arabia? Yeah.
I had no idea you're gonna. So folks don't realize this. We don't talk about the show before we get on. We just chat about whatever, and then we get on the show. So we have no idea what's coming, other than in the articles Ellen prepares. So when you said that, I was legitimately like, okay, I wasn't like, I hadn't I had a list of possible spots. Saudi wasn't one of them. So, um,
Well, but see, that might make it even more likely because no one is likely to come up with that.
no, I agree. That's why it's brilliant. Trust me. When you said it, it's like, wait, no. It's like it's one of those you go no, and then as soon as you say no, you're like, oh yeah, like it's like
I can see that actually.
I can see that. That's pretty good.
Also, like Saudi really wants to promote its tourism. Like if they could get some nice shots of Jack Ma at like Al Ula and the Causeway in Jeddah, that could like be a huge boon for like Chinese tourists when they later like give him back to China or something like that in return for like huge like planefuls of Chinese tourists, not Uyghurs going on Hajj, just tourists.
Listen, we'll send Jack back, but you gotta send some folks our way. So we got some concerts here, and according to Man United, family and friends took Qatar Airways and have only had good experiences. I've never.
This is a thing. Oh, so many people were pissed about this Qatar Saudi rift because then they couldn't fly Qatar Airways to Saudi Arabia and UAE anymore because they like thought that was like the best way to go. So it's no joke. Apparently, this inconvenienced a lot of people.
I looked at flying on the airlines a few years back, and my travel agent, she's like, "No, you don't want to fly with them because of something, and somewhere else was better." And so I never was going to go. I think maybe it's longer, but anyways, so I've never.
Yeah, I think it is maybe a little bit longer. I don't know.
But anyways, I don't know. Okay, Ms. Wald, where will you be this week as we start the year?
This week, I will be on investing.com. That will be on Thursday morning column, first column of the new year. I will also I have something coming up on the Hill Tuesday at, it's kind of a slightly different topic, but it has to do with a new banking regulation that could affect the energy industry. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
Okay. All right. warroomnewsletter.com. And if you're curious about China and Africa and all kinds of stuff, I had a good conversation with Mark Fasano last Thursday, New Year's Eve, I believe it was. We talked like an hour and 40 minutes on just random geopolitical stuff. So if that's of interest to you, warroommedia.com, you can check that out. And Ms. Wald, I think I will be writing a piece on why we should stop arguing or fighting for democracy, rather. Why should we stop fighting for democracy?
Okay.
Because, and I will answer the question in the newsletter that should come out today or tomorrow.
Also, anyone in the Saudi tourism ministry who'd like, a report on why sheltering Jack Ma could be good for the Saudi tourism industry should hit me up because I have like a million ideas for you now.
You've got the little push pins and the strings. And
yeah. I mean, I'm just like the money, the dollar signs are like chinging in front of my eyes. So yeah. Also, people should tune into. I'll be on Twitter tomorrow, following all of the OPEC shenanigans because we want to do this again. We didn't have enough fun today.
I know.
We have more fun tomorrow.
We didn't. We let's see here. The UFC, has got Dubai that sponsors a lot of their stuff because they're trying to get their tourism. We're Abu Dhabi, and so we should get them to have us down to do like an energy summit or something, like a week, and sponsor the show. And then the keynote could be your presentation on why you should grant Jack Ma temporary asylum.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the Chinese tourism is a huge market that I think is probably largely untapped in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, well, here we go. We're ready for it. So, okay, listeners, we'll be sure to follow Ms. Wald this week as she breaks down all things OPEC. And I think Dr. Foreman might be on next week or the week after. I can't remember if they're late because of the holiday or not. So, anyways, we'll either be live streaming next week. I think he might live stream. So, anyways, just follow on Twitter and you can find out more then. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.